It's official. Adrian Newey is leaving Red Bull. Scott and Ed are here with me to work this out and pick through it. Scott, I can't believe I've just said those words. This is something that until this story started to break, about a week ago, I never thought we'd see this day. How on earth has it come to this?
Yeah, it's definitely one that seems incredibly surprising, and you're right. You kind of can't believe it when it comes out, but then actually, when you start to piece together what's happened behind the scenes, and you start reflecting on things over the last year or so, and even way beyond that, it does actually start to make sense. A lot of people probably don't know this. I wasn't actually massively aware of this until recently, but Newey actually came very close to leaving Red Bull a year ago. He did a new contract about this time, 12 months back, which didn't allay the concerns that he had at the time, but kind of pushed them down the road a little bit, because it gave him, I think, a little bit more working freedom, a bit more control of his own hours, and he's always had, or more recently has had, this ability to kind of come and go as he pleased. But maybe I think that was emphasized even more in this new contract. But there were some underlying issues. He didn't like the fact that he felt he wasn't getting the credit that he deserved for his stature, his experience, his contribution to Red Bull's success. He didn't like the way Red Bull was kind of being set up, Pierre Vacher as the technical director, and that kind of group getting all of the plaudits. I know that he was a bit unhappy with the direction F1 was going in general. This kind of less engineering, less racing focused, more about the spectacle, loads of marketing stuff. Just moved away from what he wants F1 to be. So there was all of this stuff swirling anyway. It was kind of put a pin in it a year ago, but it's flared up again this year because all of that stuff is still relevant. And then there's some other stuff on top of that, like the wider Red Bull political power struggle in the background, destabilizing thing. And of course, the Christian Horner controversy this year, which Newey, we understand, personally has an issue with in terms of how it's been handled, probably Horner himself. And that's brought everything to the surface, piled a bunch of stuff on top. And the end is what we have now, something that can't be reconciled.
And obviously that covers very much what's happened over the past year, 18 months. But of course, this has been bubbling under with Newey for a long time. He wasn't that keen going back a decade on the hybrid regulations. He's always had interest in other things outside of Formula One, often citing the fact he didn't like the direction. So this is entirely in keeping with the personality and character, I think, of Adrian Newey. If he doesn't like a situation he's in, whether it's within a team, within the wider F1 ecosystem, or a combination of the both, he will take action on it. He's always been interested in doing other things as well. Remember back when he originally almost moved to Jaguar, which was before the eventual move he went to that team in its Red Bull form. One of the reasons he stayed at McLaren was said to be the potential to get involved in other projects, for example, America's Cup yachting. So he's someone who is a legend of Formula One, but there's more to him than just Formula One as well. He won't stay with Formula One through thick and thin, although we'll find out exactly what his future holds down the line.
Yeah, hopefully he's not gone from Formula One forever. But Ed, I'm fascinated by the thing that Scott pointed out about the kind of who gets the credit for Red Bull's success. We always know when there's any success out there, everybody wants a piece of the credit. Everybody wants to be the person responsible for it. But where do you think this lies with? Is Newey the man behind Red Bull's success, or is it the wider team at Red Bull, or is it someone particular at Red Bull? Like, how do you see through all that?
Well, the answer is it's everything, really. No one person, even someone as great a genius as Adrian Newey, can do it all. But Newey was vital because, as we've talked about on podcasts, on videos, in our written stuff on the race over the years, the way he's used is unique. He's not 24/7 nose to the grindstone, but he injects that creativity, those ideas. That was essential in producing a car that worked so well at the start of the current regulations cycle. He designed the suspension himself. He understood conceptually the importance of not just gunning for peak downforce numbers from the floor, because you can get eye-watering downforce numbers, but you need that to work in the real world and give away a little for something that can actually operate and won't have porpoising and bouncing and that kind of thing. That's the kind of contribution he could make. He wasn't doing the hard graft, the grinding through of the design process, but that wasn't what he was there for. He was injecting those ideas, that vision, that conceptual value. So that makes him essential, and it's hard to say how important because we've never seen a Red Bull operating at this level without Adrian Newey. So it's very, very hard to test. But he was hugely influential. Let's not pretend otherwise.
and we'll get an idea, I guess, of exactly who's responsible or how responsible Newey was. What if he goes to another team and suddenly turns around their fortunes, or probably a slightly better test of that is whether Red Bull falls to pieces without him. But there will be other variables that come into that and muddy that picture, because Red Bull's going to, let's face it, sorry to depress everybody, but dominate F1 in 2025 as well, because it's all just going to be a carryover of this year. But then it's a completely different competition in 26, new car rules, new engine rules. That could be what trips Red Bull up, and whether Newey's there or not, you don't know how they're going to handle that challenge, if their own engine's going to be up to it. So we'll get an idea of how important Newey really was in the modern era to Red Bull, but we're still not going to get a definitive answer. The one thing I would add on sort of how he has fit into this is it's kind of interesting to me, because whether it was that Aston Martin Valkyrie project or the Red Bull RB17 hypercar, Newey has had these things, as Ed was talking about, that he really does latch onto and get interested in. And one of the reasons why he had less day-to-day involvement in the F1 teams, because he wanted to pursue these kind of opportunities. If the organisation has moved on to facilitate that he's not around and doesn't want to be around all the time, he can't then complain that the organisation has moved on to facilitate him doing other stuff, and therefore other people will get credit. So there's a little bit of a balance in that to go, and I'm not trying to say that this is, Newey's ego running out of control or anything like that, but I think it's just a function of how a modern F1 team works, and probably does speak to how unique Newey is and what he offers, that he was able to exist in this kind of structure, in this kind of role, for as long as he has.
Well, he was an anachronism in a way, in that he was a very positive influence, but there's no one else like him. That's what makes him that anachronism to the benefit of the team. So there was always going to come a point where this happened. He's been there for 2 decades, basically. So there was always going to be this test ahead. And it's a great trial, I guess, of whether those creative ideas can come up, can be originated within Red Bull. There's plenty of very clever, intelligent designers there. But can they have that step back, that capacity to inject those ideas? And I think that's something they have to learn as they move on into the post-Newey era. How do you actually give people the breathing space not to be 24/7, turning the handle to grind out the designs, etc., and actually have a little bit of time to inject the original thinking that Newey provided? That's the test.
It's going to be fascinating then to see what happens to Red Bull in a post-Newey world. But Scott, what happens to Newey? Should we expect, for example, that he's going to turn up in a year or two's time, whenever he's free to move, in, say, Ferrari Red?
That is obviously what a lot of people kind of want to see. An Adrian Newey, Lewis Hamilton dream team alongside Charles Leclerc in Fred Vasseurs' glorious Ferrari era. It would tick a couple of boxes for Newey. He said before, I don't think he frames them as regrets, but a couple of the things that he says he'd have liked to have done in his career is work with Ferrari and work with Lewis Hamilton. Well, he has the chance now.
2 birds in one stone.
Exactly, it would be absolutely perfect. But he clearly has a slightly complex situation to untangle at Red Bull. He has been heavily involved in this RB17 road car project that Red Bull have sunk a lot into, and it's kind of Newey's baby, really. Because this is a big thing, if he wants to stay in F1, if it's not just everything he's fed up with and it's just Red Bull that he wants to move away from, he's going to want to be getting stuck into the 2026 rules, and all the aero work on that can begin January the 1st, 2025, and Newey's going to want to be right in the cut and thrust of that. But what Red Bull can't do, I assume anyway, is if he decides that's it, I'm retiring, I'm going to go enjoy myself in South Africa, or I'm going to go and enjoy a different technical project, or I'm just going to tend to my garden for as long as I want.
Around the world, something like that.
Exactly. They can't stop him from doing that. He could just decide this is it and retire.
So Ed, if we assume then that he doesn't have something lined up, he's not already signed for somebody else, I'm trying to work out how to word this question. Where do you think he should go? Which might be a different question to where do you want him to go?
Well, there's 2 pathways for me. I quite like the idea of him just sailing off into the sunset, literally, given he's got his boat project on order, and just enjoying the fruits of his labours. He will always be someone who's working in some capacity, technically. I'm sure he can find challenges to embrace, and I think personally he might well enjoy that. If he wants to stay in the cut and thrust of F1, then he should obviously go to another team. And there are 2 teams I would like to see him at. One is Ferrari, for obvious reasons, not just because there's that romanticism about Ferrari, can he get Ferrari back on top, but also because it's quite exciting what road car projects he could get involved with at Ferrari. They've got everything there. A Ferrari Newey supercar, what a fantastic project that would be. The other one I'd like to see, which seems a long shot, would be Williams. If I was the owner of Williams Dalton Capital,
finish the story.
Exactly, square the circle, as it were. I would want to offer Newey a stake in the team, the stake that Williams didn't offer him almost 3 decades ago, that meant he left. Get him back in, give him a stake, and that won't be financially motivated by Newey. That will be symbolic. He wants to feel like it's his team, and he can play a part in rebuilding that team to what it once was. I think that challenge is probably unlikely, but there will be part of Newey that would actually quite like that. So every Formula One team will be on the phone to him. But what will get him through the door if he does want to continue is the type of challenge. He doesn't want lots of money. He doesn't even just want a team where you say, look, you'll have lots of money. He wants something very specific to him. And I actually think Ferrari and Williams as the long shot are the two ones that offer the obvious Newey-esque challenges that he would quite enjoy.